Hello everyone, welcome to week number 5. We are going to be looking at study unit number 4 in this video. It's going to be a quick overview video, nothing too crazy, just looking at the Adobe Spark page for this particular study unit. I will be covering SU12 in a later one in more depth because there is some confusion there. But let's focus on study unit number 4, which deals with Covey's third habit: put first things first. Right? The time allocation for the study unit is approximately 4 hours, shouldn't take you that long. And the focus is on the idea of that second creation we spoke about in the previous week, which is self-management. Because we said that leadership is the first creation and management is the second. Management is intrinsically tied to habit number 3, which we will be dealing with today. It emphasizes the fact that we must manage our affairs in such a way that we can realize our mission statement. A central approach in this is the way in which we spend our time and how we pay attention to our priorities. Through the realization of habits 1, 2, and 3, we move from being dependent people to being independent, so we can work on our own. We've had all these private victories in becoming proactive and beginning with the end in mind and putting first things first, that we can now be independent and we don't need to depend on others to actually succeed. We can act effectively in groups and even take the lead. Right. So the learning outcomes are as follows. You need to be able to discuss the value and role of the human characteristic, namely independent willpower. You need to know the 4 generations of time management, so the time management matrix. Know the activities and results of each quadrant of the time management matrix and discuss the differences. Explain how to move to quadrant 2 of the time management matrix and become a self-manager by determining roles and scheduling your priorities. And then finally, to know and apply the role and utilization of effective delegation. Right, there's a yummy photo of marshmallows, which acted as a metaphor for the specific study unit. So in class, I gave everyone 20 pieces of spaghetti, about 30 centimeters of tape and string, and I told them that the team that builds the highest freestanding structure would win a packet of marshmallows. The catch was that the structure they create must be able to stand on its own, so it can't hang or be suspended from anything. It needs to stand on its own, and the entire marshmallow needs to be on the top of the structure. It couldn't be ripped apart or eaten or broken down to smaller pieces. It needed to be the full mushroom I did this in class as well, marshmallow, as I had given it to them, right? So if they had cut or eat any part of that marshmallow, they would have been disqualified. So yeah, they were allowed to break up the spaghetti, string, and tape, and yeah, at the end I asked them to bring it to the front of the class for judging, and as soon as I told them to let go after 15 minutes of building this thing, many collapsed. I would say the majority actually made it through, which was good, and yes, it was then expected just for them to reflect a little on the informal assessment and think about what building techniques could have made the tower stronger. Did the actual placement of the marshmallow affect the strength of the tower? Did it bring it down? What alternative materials would have been better suited for this activity? And did the people in the group actually assume different roles? The funny thing about this task is it's been done to death around the world, and from research that's been done, is children tend to do better than business students at this challenge. On virtually every single measure of innovation, kindergartners, so we're talking grade 0 here, create taller and more interesting structures than other people who were tested. The reason kids do better than business school students is that kids spend more time playing and prototyping. They naturally start with the marshmallow and stick in the sticks. The business school students spend a vast amount of time planning, then executing that plan, with almost no time to fix the design once they've put the marshmallow on top. So the marshmallow is a metaphor for hidden assumptions of a project, right? So these are the things you don't expect to happen before they happen. And this is widespread in the marketplace now. And you need to be adaptable and flexible, and you need to know that there are always hidden things that you don't assume will sort of come to fruition before they do. Um, the assumption in this challenge is that marshmallows are light and fluffy, and they're easily supported by spaghetti sticks, these little hard, rigid things. When in actuality, and when you try and build this, the marshmallows aren't so light anymore. The lesson in the marshmallow challenge is that we need to identify the assumptions in our project, the real customer needs, the cost of the project, the product, the duration of the service, and then test them early and often. That's the mechanism that leads to effective innovation and what makes you effective in the workplace too. So now I asked everyone to think, what do they spend their time on? Do they save the more difficult tasks for later, or do they neglect to give the significant things enough attention or time? Habit 3 is about putting first things first. Now, what that means is important things should be done before less important things. So have you ever said first things first? This means you are clear about your priorities and that you act on them. In order to prioritize, we consider certain responsibilities deemed important and some of those as unimportant or not so important. We also deem them urgent and not urgent, so the things that need to be attended to now and the things that can wait. The first 3 habits fall under private victories, which all have to do with self-mastery and growing your character in the most basic, essential manner. Putting first things first is thus part of this incremental, sequential approach to the development of personal and interpersonal effectiveness. Covey says important things should be done before less important things. If you've ever said first things first, this means you are clear about your priorities and you act on them. In order to prioritize, as we've said, you need to consider certain responsibilities important and some not important. The important concepts for this study are independent will, time management, intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, prioritizing, and delegation. So independent will is this unique human endowment, right, that makes self-management possible. As we've said, putting first things first deals with the second creation, which is management, which is the physical part, and that is self-management. It's the ability to make decisions and choices and then to act in accordance with those decisions, right? It is the ability to act rather than be acted upon. And integrity is linked to this. Our independent will is measured by our personal integrity, which is the value we place on ourselves. You have integrity if you meet deadlines. You have integrity if you do what you say you're going to do. It is our ability to make and keep commitments to ourselves and to essentially walk our talk. So we don't just talk big, we enact, we follow through. We use our independent will to make decisions, commit, and keep the promises we make to ourselves. Our principles are then used to value ourselves. We manage ourselves through not only our character ethic, but our principles as well. Think about the private victories we are trying to win here in moving from a dependent person to someone who can work independently of others. So more marshmallows. This example of a marshmallow experiment has been repeated with children and has been done with adults for many years. And it shows how advantageous it can be to be future-oriented. So if you think about your future and to really keep that in your mind's eye when you work, think about it. Would you be able to wait for a marshmallow if you were to take part in this experiment? This is a wonderful little experiment, and I advise you to watch that video and then to also see what Michel Kaku actually says about this this experiment, how it determines our intellect, right? Next in class, I went through this truth or stare, which is a true or false sort of agreement task where I read statements out to the class and then they either say true or false, and then they calculate their score and then they fit into a specific quadrant as a result. So this is the main crux of putting first things first, right? This is what you actually do. if we are proactive and spend our time in the second quadrant of the time management matrix. So that's saying that where do you want to be? You want to be in quadrant number 2. So let's look at the nice visual representation here. We see things that are important, things that are not so important, things that are urgent, and things that are not urgent. So when we focus on things that are urgent and important, these fit in quadrant number 1. So these are things like crisis, pressing problems, deadline-driven projects, meetings, and people who tend to lie in this quadrant are described as procrastinators, which is a negative view, or the necessitators. You tend to focus on critical issues that need to be dealt with immediately. You have no choice but to handle these issues now, or there will be serious consequences, i.e. A customer complaint, or a server gets shut down, whatever it might be. The more time you spend here, the bigger it becomes, right? So it just inflates the more you spend in that. These people who find themselves here, often run to quadrant number 4 for relief. Well, what's in quadrant number 4? This is stuff like busy work, junk mail, sometimes phoning, time wasters, things like people typically see playing games as a time waster if you play excessively. These are escape activities, right? So we run from here to the things that are not urgent and things that are unimportant for relief, and then we usually go between the two. Quadrant number 2, which is where Covey says we should spend most of our time, is focusing on things that are important but not urgent. And the urgency is kind of taken away by the fact that we plan and we prepare for these things. These are things like recreation, so that's like painting, empowering others, that's exercising, making time for the people you love. So our goals sit in quadrant number 2, as does exercise. These important things that one can postpone until we have more time. If you are aware of how important something will be in your life, you know you will get there eventually, right? But let's talk about quadrant number 3. So these are things like interruptions, phone calls, meetings, sometimes some pressing matters, and some popular activities. So this is where the yes man and the yes woman belong. This is where chores, obligations, maintenance tasks need to be attended to. So we struggle to say no to these things, as we sometimes believe we are the only ones capable of completing these tasks. So it's like, it's my way or it's not going to be done correctly. We feel obliged to do these, right? This quadrant therefore becomes one of manipulation and guilt. Despite this, these tasks can be delegated to others. So this is where delegation comes in. We will cover that in a bit. Procrastinators also find themselves in this quadrant. So they'll flip between 1 and 3. And because they think this is important busy work. So they don't feel as guilty about avoiding the real work if they come over here. All right. So quadrant number 4 is where the slackers belong, and these are trivial things: social media, the internet, video games, and these are diversionary activities which keep us from completing the important things. So now you need to ask yourself the following questions. What did you find out about yourself when you were answering those questions? What is this information true? Are you really a yes man or a yes woman? You focus on things that are urgent but are not so important. What are you going to do with this information? You're just going to be like, oh, okay, that's interesting, but I don't give a damn. Or how are you going to think about how this habit that Covey's speaking about, putting first things first, how will you enact that and let it help you and empower you? Time and self-management are intertwined with one another, as 4 generations of time management exist. These are the 4 quadrants. This time management matrix puts forward that we should first manage ourselves, then we manage our time. The first wave of generation is characterized by notes and checklists to the demands placed on our time and energy. The second reflects an attempt to look ahead and schedule events by way of calendars and appointment making. Prioritization and clarifying values is related to the reflection of the current time management field, as well as the 3rd generation. The 4th generation states that the challenge is not to manage time, but to manage ourselves. The 2 factors that define an activity as urgent, The two factors that define an activity are urgent and unimportant. The two factors that define any activity we are engaged in are whether they're urgent and whether they're important. Urgent means it requires immediate attention and that it acts on us, like a ringing phone. Importance, on the other hand, has to do with results. It contributes to your mission, values high priority goals. We react to urgent matters, while important matters that are not urgent require more initiative, more proactivity. Now, when looking at our time management matrix, we can define things called intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So there's an example here of intrinsic motivation, where Lebo is intrinsically motivated to run. So this is when you do something because you find enjoyment in it, or it is interesting to you. So this is a form of motivation which involves engaging in behavior because it is personally rewarding. So essentially performing an activity for its own sake rather than the desire for an external reward or to avoid punishment, which is how Tato is motivated, right? So Tato's reasons for running are a bit different. Tato does it to avoid negative consequences or for external rewards. That's extrinsic motivation. So you are extrinsically motivated when you engage in activities to earn a reward, so to get a medal, or so you run so your wife doesn't shout at you for being, a lazy fat slob, for example. I know that's a very extreme example, but yeah, that's the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic. Can you distinguish between them? What makes them similar and what sets them apart from one another? The next thing we do when we put first things first is we prioritize. So now we know that we need to manage ourselves and we need to manage our time, and we need to also look at how we are motivated to perform these tasks, right? To prioritize, we need to say no to urgent and unpopular activities and yes to self-discipline, planning, and PC activities. We will discuss PC activities more later. So we need to have a paradigm shift in order to move to quadrant 2 and to get organized and put first things first. So the key activities are identifying our roles, selecting the goals we wish to pursue, scheduling our time, and managing ourselves, and then adapting to our world and the things that happen to us, because we can't control everything. Now, delegation is the next important topic for the study unit, and Lisa Paulson of Posey Corp says the following. You know that whatever your professional goals, you can't achieve them alone. You need a team. The definition of scalable in a human is the ability to successfully find, delegate to, and manage great teams. Teamwork is inevitable. This is where Stephen Covey's clear and useful recipe for delegation from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People comes in. As he defines it, delegating involves a clear, upfront, mutual understanding and commitment in 5 areas. These are the 5 areas. Desired results. This is creating a clear mutual understanding of what needs to be accomplished, focusing on what, not how. Focusing on results, not the methods to attain it. This requires patience and being sure that other people understand and see the same thing you see. Guidelines, setting parameters for people, warning them of the potential pitfalls and what they should know that they should not do. Resources, talking through the human, financial, technical, or organizational resources the person should and could draw on to accomplish the desired results. Accountability, setting up the standards of performance that will be used in evaluating the results and the specific time when reporting and evaluation will take place. For example, accountability at the NWU where I work is seen in the form of a task agreement that is completed at the beginning of every year, where it states exactly the percentages of time that each academic/researcher will spend on teaching and learning activities, ad hoc activities, and everything in between. That is how we are held accountable. So at the end of the year, we get reviewed on that, and people get performance bonuses based on their performance. And then finally, consequences. So specify what will happen, the good, the bad, and then the result of the evaluation on the final product or service. I'm not going to go through all of this. Please make sure that you know how to effectively delegate and what stewardship delegation is all about. Right. I think that is everything. Yes, it is for now. And I hope you enjoyed this quick little run through. I will see you next week.